If you think migration is a modern crisis, you're missing the bigger story. Because we've all been refugees before. This isn't just a refugee crisis. This is human history. This is the Great Migration. Before borders, before flags, before names like America and Europe even existed, humans were migrants. About 70,000 years ago, the first human lived in Africa. There were small bands of hunter and gatherers, living off the land. But then, something happened. The world changed. The climate became unpredictable. Food sources disappeared. And so, they ran. Not from war, not from politics, from survival itself. The first group left East Africa, likely following the coastline. Slowly, they spread. 65,000 years ago, they reached the Middle East. Then 50,000 years ago, they crossed into Asia and Australia. Around 45,000 years ago, they pushed into Europe. 15,000 years ago, they crossed a frozen land and became the first people of the Americas. This wasn't an invasion, this was survival. Every person alive today, whether you're from Africa, Europe, Asia, or America, we are all descendants of refugees. And yet, today we close our doors to those doing the very thing that made our species survive. As humans settled, civilizations rose and fell. And with every empire, with every war, with every disaster, people moved. Around 5,000 years ago, the Indo-Europeans migrated from Eurasian grasslands, bringing languages that evolved into English, Spanish, Hindi, and Persian. In the year 476, the fall of Rome displaced millions. Germanic tribes like Vandals reshaped Europe. Migration shaped the world. Even the modern nations we see today only exist because of migration. The United States, built by waves of Irish, Italian, and German migrants. Latin America, a fusion of indigenous, European, and African peoples. The Middle East, a crossroads of migration for thousands of years. Yet, despite this history, we now fear migration. We forget that every wave of refugee helped build the societies we live in today. While early humans migrated for survival, today's refugees face challenges shaped by politics, wars, and climate change. People don't wake up and decide to become refugees. No one chooses to leave their home, their family, their culture, unless they have no other choice. So, why do people run today? War and conflict. Syria. Over 13 million people displaced since 2011 in Syria. That's more than half of the country. Sudan, Yemen, Ethiopia. Wars no one talks about, but millions are running from them. By 2050, up to 1.2 billion people could be displaced by climate disasters. Rising sea levels threatens entire nations like Maldives. Desertification in Africa making land unlivable. The Rohingya in Myanmar were burned out of their villages. Women in Taliban-controlled Afghanistan have lost their rights to work, to study, to exist. Economic collapse, a crisis no one talks about. Venezuela's economy collapsed, forcing over 7 million people to flee. Lebanon, Haiti, Sri Lanka, economies in free fall, leaving millions without food or medicine. For those forced to flee, escaping is just the beginning. Because between war-torn homes and safe new lands, there is something else, the journey. A journey filled with danger, death, and impossible choices. Some make it, many don't, crossing deserts and war zones. Imagine walking thousands of miles across the Sahara Desert. That's the reality of many African migrants trying to reach Europe. Temperatures can reach 50 Celsius. Many run out of food and water. Smugglers abandon groups in the middle of nowhere. For those who survive, the next stop, Libya. But Libya is a nightmare. Migrants are sold as slaves in open markets. Yet, even knowing this, people still go, because what they're running from is worse. The deadliest sea in the world. For those escaping Africa and the Middle East, there is one last obstacle, the Mediterranean Sea. Every year, Thousands try to cross it in overcrowded rubber boats. Many don't know how to swim. Smugglers give them fake life jackets that sinks instead of float. Some boats capsize within hours of departure. Since 2014, more than 28,000 people drowned in the Mediterranean. 28,000 human beings. Let that sink in. Despite this, European countries have criminalized rescue ships. Imagine watching people drown and being told not to save them. This is the reality of modern migration. For those fleeing violence in Central America, the journey north is just as brutal. They walk through jungles filled with venomous snakes, jaguars, and drug cartels. Some cross rivers so strong, families get swept away. After all of this, they reach the US-Mexico border. A wall separates them from safety. Some try to climb it, others cross the desert. Thousands die every year before they ever reach safety. And those who do make it, many are sent back to war, to hunger, to death. After surviving hell, they're told you're not welcome. But if they make it, their struggle isn't over. What happens when refugees arrive? Let's say you survive the journey, you cross the border, you step onto safe soil. What happens next? Some think refugees get handed houses, money, and jobs. But the truth, it's the opposite. Most start with nothing. No money, no connections, no idea how to navigate a new country. Some live in refugee camps for years, even decades. Others struggle to find jobs because they don't speak the language. Their degrees aren't recognized. Many employers refuse to hire them. And then there is the hate. People accuse them of stealing jobs. Government blame them for economic problems. The media spreads fear and misinformation. But here's what they don't tell you. First, refugees boost the economy. Germany took in over 1 million Syrian refugees in 2015. Today, over half of them are employed and paying taxes. Germany's economy is stronger with them. Uganda, one of the world's poorest nations, lets refugees work and start businesses. The result? They contribute more to the economy than the native-born citizens. The United States once rejected Vietnamese refugees in 1970s. Today, they are one of the most successful immigrant communities in America. 2. Refugees create culture. More than half of America's billion-dollar startups were founded by immigrants or their children. Refugees don't take, they build. But despite this, some countries still shut their doors. And that brings us to the most chilling part of all. History has already shown us, every time refugees are rejected, tragedy follows. 1. The Jews who were sent back to their death. In 1939, a ship carrying 900 refugees tried to enter the US and Canada, fleeing Hitler's Germany. Both countries refused them. The ship was forced to return to Europe. Many of those on board were later killed in the Holocaust. The Rohingya crisis. Over 1 million Rohingya Muslims fled Myanmar after their villages were burned. Bangladesh, one of the poorest countries, took them in. Richer nations, silent. If we do nothing, here's what's coming. By 2050, up to 1.2 billion people will be displaced by climate change. Wars will keep pushing people from their homes. Economic collapse will make migrations inevitable. If we build walls instead of solutions, we're just delaying the inevitable. Because history proves one thing: desperation doesn't stop at borders. What can we do? It's easy to feel powerless, but we're not. We set the culture, change the narrative, challenge misinformation when you see it, share real refugee stories instead of fear-driven propaganda. Number 2. Support policies that work. Countries that integrate refugees grow stronger. Refugees who work and contribute benefit everyone. 3. Help locally. Support organizations that assist refugees. Volunteer in resettlement programs, because one day it could be us, and when that day comes, will the world open its doors, or will it turn us away? History is watching us. This isn't just about refugees. This is about all of us, and history will judge how we respond. So when the next generation looks back, will they see compassion or regret? Because the choice is ours. If you found this eye-opening, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let's keep talking, let's keep learning, and let's build a world where no one is left behind. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.